It all starts out with doing the inner work and figuring out your authentic, vulnerable, most naked self.
Mm-hmm.
And who is that? Without any of that heavy armor on you that people they lug around this armor, this invisible armor with them all the time. Everybody does. I've done it, and I still have some of that armor. But it starts out the inner work, and then it gets into the preparation phase. So you have to figure out what is your mission, what's the end game, what are the obstacles in the way, what are your contingency plans. Put it under live fire. Trial it. Then you get into that moment and you got to execute. And then within that moment, you're trying to keep score. You're trying to figure out what the scoreboard is. Your response management is so huge. If things come off the rails, you got to go back to the contingency plans that you trained on and really try to develop. And then once you're immediately done with that moment, you go into debrief mode and you express gratitude. And because we all know the opposite of depression is gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah.
So
truly feeling it and being in the moment with it. That's another thing too.
Yeah.
Own the moment and be in the moment.
Correct. And you go through that debrief right away with lessons learned. And a lot of people don't do this, and it takes 5-10 minutes. That's it, to do that quick debrief. And how I got that lesson was from a mentor of mine in the Navy SEAL. He's in the SEAL team for 16 years. One of the things that they do after every single live op or training op is they do an immediate debrief, and they get really authentic with each other about what they did well, what they didn't do well, who can improve on what, and how it's going to be better the next time. Even if it was an incredible training op or a mission, they're constantly turning the nozzle to get to that right pressure point.
Our guest today helps entrepreneurs and athletes execute in big moments, enhancing personal and financial freedom. He's a corporate leader, coach, and former NCAA student-athlete. Welcome to the show, the host of the Competitor's Mentality podcast, Eric Bond.
Hey, what's happening?
What's going on, brother? I love your microphone of choice.
Thank you.
Looking sharp over there.
I got that. I like that whole wood background you got going on, man.
Yeah. Everyone's like, dude, I love your Zoom background. I'm like, that's a real background. That's not superimposed. That's really there. Appreciate it. And I love your shirt, Own Your Moment. Obviously that's your that's what you say. I went to your social when we originally connected a few weeks back, and I saw it was all over, and it's on your website. So own your moment. I think it's awesome. I think it's also interesting too. Can you take I think it's interesting you chose moment, right? Own your moment, a shorter period of time opposed to the macro. Can you share the meaning of own your moment?
I can. It really goes all the way back to, I'll tell you a story about my grandfather on D-Day, if I can digress for a moment. So my grandfather was at the time a captain in the U.S. Army. And so if anybody's seen Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks' character, my grandfather was the same exact rank. So on D-Day, his unit, his boat wasn't in like the very first wave or anything like that, but they were in one of the subsequent waves right after. And the beachhead was by no means won at that particular time. So my grandfather is the highest ranking officer, and his landing craft was in the back of the boat. And so at the back of the landing craft, he's stationed, and he looks up front, looks out over his men, and you can picture 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, 17 even. And there's two sergeants that are underneath him that are up in the front part of the boat. And this story was told to my dad at my grandfather's funeral, firsthand by this sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And sergeant was from Ohio. And my grandfather looked up and could observe him not in the right mindset and not in the right place to where he needs to be to when that door drops to take those kids off that boat. So my grandfather, being very aware of the situation, works his way up through the men up into the front part of the boat. And the sergeant didn't know he was coming. And all of a sudden the sergeant felt a hand on the top of on his shoulder. And my grandfather says, "Hey, Sarge, I can take it from here today." I mean, think about that. And the sergeant's kind of like, kind of relieved in a way. And you know what? I can't, I wouldn't know, how would I react in that situation? I have no idea. I mean, I'd be scared out of my mind, right? And so, anyways, my grandfather stays up there, leads those boys off that boat onto that beach, and he lost some. There's some that are buried in the American Cemetery over in Normandy. But anyways, my grandfather and the sergeant served through the whole European theater together, and they liberated towns like Saint Mary Glees and other French towns from German occupation, and they both returned home. And really, when I go and start thinking about own your moment, it all goes back to my grandfather in that moment on D-Day. And we just had June 6th, just, the anniversary of
Right.
D-Day just passed. And
Yeah,
it's
we have
always,
Memorial Day and D-Day, like obviously back to back. Yeah.
yeah, it's always an interesting reflection day for me. I think about my grandfather a ton. And it's all simply with my dad. We both think about him a ton. Don't really say much about it during the day, but it's both on our minds. And my grandfather was heavily affected by that, and he was a very stoic guy. But when he went to that cemetery, and they did at the time when he was leaving Europe, they just had wooden markers, so it wasn't as beautiful and pristine as it looks today.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really it really did a number on him from a mental standpoint. And when you look out and see the cost of all of those lives, all those young men,
Right.
the
Even though he did
cost that he paid.
his damn best and as a hero, he still looks at it like one man down.
Yeah, he didn't.
It
He
was a
didn't.
failed mission. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't bring all those guys home. And
Right.
my dad's actually named after a guy that served underneath him there, and that is
Oh, that's
buried in
cool.
Normandy.
Yeah.
And then you transport that to his brother, my uncle Archie, who my wife and I have we have a baby due. My wife has a baby due here in about
Mm-hmm.
5 weeks, and we're going to name him Archer and call him Archie, for my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather's brother, my great uncle Archie, and he was missing in action in Burma in the Pacific Theater. His whole unit was wiped out beside him,
Mm-hmm.
and he fought his way out of the Burmese jungle. And finally hook up with American forces and was missing in action and all that stuff. So really,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about Own Your Moment, it really all goes back to that is how it starts.
Mm-hmm. Guys, you can check out Eric Bond. All the links are going to be clickable in the show notes. You can dive more into his content, his website, his podcast. He's on social. He's active. He's building a nice following there. And again, own your moment is something he says quite a bit. And you could see now there's that. I knew there was going to be a personal connection. I didn't know it was going to go as far as your grandfather fighting for our freedoms and putting his life on the line. And I knew it was going to be something that would be, more than just a cute Instagram graphic, right? I knew that there's going to
Yeah,
be something to it.
yeah,
Just knowing your background and what you do is like you're on purpose. You're tied to it. I could, so I'm glad that you did share that. I didn't know the story behind it, guys. Is that you're tuning in? You're like, oh, he just set him up. No, I had no idea. I had no idea. We're just talking about
yeah,
freedom. We're talking about our actual freedoms of being living in America, right? And there's a lot of turmoil, but obviously
sure,
we live in a place that we get to wake up with our freedoms. Typically in America, where you get to go and be the best version of yourself or put your best foot forward. I know that's what you're doing, coaching and with your podcast as well. What I'd like you to talk about a little bit is the two freedoms that entrepreneurs, it's two keywords for us, two hot words are financial freedom, right, and personal freedom. And I know you're strong in believing in both of those. Can you share why? And even more importantly, I think how people can really get to that, unlock both of those, financial and personal freedom.
sure. Yeah, no, great question. It the Once again, it's a journey based story for me. Being in corporate America and being a leader in corporate America for a decade. The last 7 of those years at Mass Mutual in New York State, serving as a regional recruiting director and overseeing a couple different cities and a team and all of that. I got to a point there where I felt confined to an income level, and I felt confined to my influence that I can have over over a certain, and I'm not talking influence like I'm a cult leader or anything like that. That's not where I'm going with this, but I felt that I was able to, if I did go out onto my own and create my own brand in the vein that I wanted to do things in, I could have a much wider audience of people that I can interact with and help and coach and do all of that. But the personal freedom, you only get one shot at life, and you need to live it how you want to live it. And I feel a lot of people get dictated to by society, and society tells people to, do this and play it safe. Do, go to college, get your 9 to 5, be happy, have a 401k. It's like society dictates safety and security. And I run absolutely counter to that. I run exactly. I look for the dangerous minefields. I that's the way that I've always been naturally wired, and it took me a long time until I really started to do a lot of deep inner work on myself to understand that you aren't going to be at your happiest if you're supporting someone else's dreams and vision.
Right. Yeah, I think it's our responsibility, man. It's our responsibility to not just go out and be an average version of ourselves. We're given gifts naturally, whatever you believe in, whether it's God, the universe, something else. I think everybody can come to agreement that we're given a set of tools, skills, an environment we're in. If you don't like the environment, many times you're able to change it. I know some of the greatest people, athletes, business people, entrepreneurs that have done extremely well typically don't come from this little cushion setup job. It's usually something where they were grinding their face off and had nothing and appreciate it, and they had to deal with that adversity to get through it, and they have the thicker skin. But you're right. I think society kind of sets us up for, they paint this picture of like the American dream. And for some people that might be true, but for others, it's like, is that really what they want to do? Is just get like this, get the house and have the family. And that's beautiful. We both have families. We both appreciate that. But
Sure.
our mission doesn't stop there. It's not like, okay, we got a roof over our head and we're just going to hang here for 40 years, hope we can retire, play some golf and pass on. And maybe a generation or two even knows who we are. I know you and I feel responsible for our success and that we can make a difference and an impact in the world in what we're doing. That's why we're doing the podcast. It's further than us. It's an extension of us. It's you now currently on the show, opening this up to your audience and people that are tuning in for my audience, learning from you, not just to hear these sound bites for an hour, 45 minutes that we have together. It's to apply it into the real life. And I love that. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
And I was
Michael,
just listening. Yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry. The one thing I want to add to that is there's a phrase that's out there that I've kind of subscribed to, and it's choose your heart.
Mm,
Everything in life is hard, and if you want to be broke, that's hard. If you want to be homeless, that's hard. If you want to be ultra successful, that's hard too.
yeah,
But
it's
you
so
you
true.
you choose your hard and choose what hard you want to go after. And
Hmm.
some people are meant to work for people. That's hard.
Hmm.
Some people are meant to be entrepreneurs and do that. That's hard. It's just, why not, if you have a finite time on this planet, you have a beginning and you have an end. No one gets out of this alive, right? So if you're going to spend your time here in that dash
Hmm.
of years, that middle dash between your birth year and your year that you pass on, dude, why not try to go out with your hair on fire, man? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, it's just, I would
Well, let me ask you,
rather I
Eric,
would
where
rather
where
do
are your
that.
grandparents from? Are they from here?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
they spent a
Both
lot of their
set?
life here. My grandmother on my dad's side is
Hmm.
from Minnesota, so she's her family is from Norway. So she was like first
Okay.
generation over
So
here.
here you go. This
So
is what I'm getting at, man. I didn't know that for sure. So I figured typically most people tuning in, I mean, we're recording this in 2021. I know, most of my friends, connections, and someone I talk to typically has a grandparent that came over here. The opportunity was here, in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Everybody was flocking to the country. And
sure.
both sets of my grandparents and your grandmother from Norway decided to do something pretty outside the box. Like, pick everything up, come over to a country you don't even necessarily know the language. In my case, they all had to learn English and barely could speak it. And what I think is incredible is most people who did that were married, like young couples, and we're talking back in the day, people were getting married at 17, 18, 19 years old, and that was regular. So imagine being like 20 years old, and that would be kind of an older person deciding what they're going to do, coming over to the country and not being with your spouse. Like, it was all handwritten letter. My grandpa moved from Italy to Venezuela, lived there, created a business there to survive with his family. My father was born there in 1951, right? Like, I don't even know what that looked like. They joked and said he weighed 2 coconuts. Like, the doctor, I mean, who knows what it was? Probably a guy on the side of the road, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
And then they take about a year to get gathered. My grandma comes over at a different time, and then they go to the States. Like, it's common. I believe the same thing happened on my mom's side, where they went from Italy to like Brooklyn, and then my grandpa showed up at a different time, and like they had to figure out ways to find income. And I think
Yeah.
today people just, we go to school, whether it's public, private, doesn't matter. You kind of go to school and you figure, okay, what do you want to be? And it's usually like associated to these job titles: school teacher, fireman, police officer, astronaut, like, is usually the crazy funny one, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then you ask, like, if you ask a group of third graders right now, who wants to be the president of the United States of America, or who believes you can be the president of the United States of America, the whole classroom, their hands are going to go up, 30 of them. And you ask them in high school, ninth grade, and only one hand will go up, and it's going to be the class clown trying to get a laugh.
Yeah.
What happened? Why do we all of a sudden believe that we can't reach something that's this big title in our mind, or this out of reach deal? I just feel like there's something in society that kind of tries to put us into these compartments. And the reason I
Sure.
bring this up and I'm ranting about it right now is it's like it hit something with me, because I've been thinking about my grandparents a lot. And the fact that they came over here, took a risk, and it wasn't just for them, it was for my parents and also me. I didn't exist yet, but they knew they wanted to come somewhere that they can safely have a family, that there's opportunities for us. So, do you know what kind of a slap in the face it would be if I just was like, oh, what's the easiest job for me to get where I can make 60 to 100 grand in Buffalo, New York? That's pretty good. And like, yeah, and a lot of people would say that's fine. And I'm not even trying to shoot people down if they have that as like a goal. What
Oh,
I'm
well, yeah.
saying is, if someone has a potential level of greatness in a creative writing, or a musician, or they want to do a podcast, I'm just encouraging them who are listening right now to remember that people fought for it. Your grandfather, face to face combat, fought for us to be able to wake up today and do what we want. And so I just had to get that out there, brother, because it's like, it's so important that we remember that.
No, and that's great. The interesting thing about what you said there. So I have an exercise that I do with my clients called Champion Moment, and here's how it works. And this has to do with what you just mentioned. And I'm really thankful that you brought this up. So what I try to get my clients to do is remember a point in time in their life where they were most pure, most in the zone, when everything, like, you're just feeling it. Like, you're Michael Jordan, just raining in shots left and right. And there's a moment in everybody's life where you are on the top of your game, you're in flow state, everything's just clicking. The example that I use for myself is, and I don't know why this has always stuck out in my mind, but it has. And I accomplished a lot of really neat things in sports, got to be a college athlete, all that. But when I go back to a sixth grade basketball game at Blessed Sacrament, a small little parochial school gym in a town Tonawanda in Kenmore, I was I was on another level that game. And the thing is I can remember every sight, smell, sound, feel, touch from that whole night. We wound up winning the game 27-24. I scored 21 of the 27 points, including the winning shot with about 8 seconds left. I can remember how packed the gym was. I mean, it's just like, anybody's been in a small parochial school gym, it's got a unique smell, right? for whatever reason, that smell has stuck with me. There was no room to sit down. People were kind of spilling out into the foyer. It was loud. There's parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters. Everybody's just excited, right? And I can still hear the squeaks of the gym floor. I can still feel the ball in my hand. I can feel the ball leaving my hand, and I can hear the sound of the swish of the net when that ball went in 8 seconds. I can hear the buzzer going off. My dad was my coach. I can feel my dad's embrace, and I remember exactly what he said to me. And the point I'm driving at is everybody has a moment like that they can port themselves back to. A lot of times that happens when you are 9, 10, 8, 12, before society has just chipped away at you over and over and telling you that you're too small, you're too slow, you can't do this, you can't do that. The TV's telling you things that you can't do. Your teachers are telling you things you can't do. Your parents are telling you things you can't do because they love you and they're trying to protect you. But and if you go back, the reason we believe in Superman and Santa Claus when we're little is because no one said that they're not real. So what I try to get my clients to do is go back and say, okay, let's capture that moment of what time in your life, and it doesn't have to be sports, it could be something else. Capture that, because that's replicatable, and you can apply that directly and plug it directly into your career once you have that feeling again. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And for the audience, that was no tee up either. That
We're working together. I was
yeah,
I just interviewed Chip Baker, and we're like doing the alley-oop back and forth. So let's keep it going, baby.
but that's so true. So and if you guys have, just even if you're listening to this and you got 10 minutes today and you're driving in your car, turn the music off, turn off a podcast, and just think about that moment in your life. And I guarantee if you think hard enough, you're gonna feel it, and you're gonna find it.
And that's the thing too, is like when you have that moment of winning, it's not a one-time thing. Like, you're looking for it immediately again. It's why you see when players win a championship, they're already like, and you can see them calculating, feeling it next time instead of being present. But that could be like, that was your special moment playing basketball, where you were on, you had magic in your spirit that night. You were just, you just felt it, right? And that happens, but that could happen in business. It could happen anywhere. But a lot of times if someone feels it, and it's like you said, later on in life, we kind of have this thing like, oh, well, it's just a one-time thing or whatever. And you kind of try to minimize it in a way that isn't really serving to you, instead of trying to say, what was that? I want to unlock that. And it could be anything. Just you had that feeling in basketball, and now I know you're going and doing that with your coaching, and you're winning in other ways in your life. And I think that's incredible. What we're going to do is take a quick timeout, quick sponsorship timeout. We're here with Eric Bond. We're going to be back in 1 second. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, guys, we're back in action with Eric Bond, the host of the Competitor's Mindset podcast. So we're talking about owning your moment. We're talking about swishing back in the smelling the arena that he was at, the small school, and just understanding. Eric's an NCAA athlete too, so he's taken what he's learned there and he's applied it to his life, and now he's applied it to helping his clients out. And something that we're both Buffalo boys here, so we're recording this. Are you in Buffalo currently?
Yeah, well, technically I'm up by Lewiston. So
okay, so he's a little outside of Buffalo. I'm actually also a little bit outside of Buffalo. But the reason I bring it up is we have our hometown Buffalo Bills, and we have a head coach that took over a few years ago and really turned the program around. And thing that he said over and over and over again, and people kind of mocked him for it the first year because they're like, who's this guy? Was trust the process. He said it from like, he may have said it in his press conference. I don't know, but he, like his first one, but he said it over and over. And it kind of got to the point where if it didn't work out, that was going to backfire because he kept saying, you got to just trust the process, right? Well, in that short period of time, he's been on the team, I think, 4 years. 3 of them, he's been in the playoffs. And last year, he advanced his team to the AFC Championship game, which is the furthest we've gone since the mid-'90s. We haven't been in the playoffs for 17 years until he took over that team. So I think we can trust the process. I want your opinion on it, though, from a player, from a coach, and from someone who coaches athletes and business people now, right, through your program. How important is it to really not overlook the process? Everyone wants to see results. In business, nobody cares as much about what the process is if you get results. But how important is it for us to not just overlook that part of the game?
You have to fall in love with the process to do anything successful. And really when you go back to own your moment and going back to that, my tagline that I use, go back to my grandfather's example. That was a moment. That wasn't, what people don't see is all the training for that particular moment that took place. And what I do with people in my process of getting them to own big moments in their life is, if you look at that, once again, it's a finite period of time. There's a beginning and then there's an end. It could be a business meeting. That's going to start at 10 o'clock and it's going to end at 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to do within that window of execution all starts beforehand. And it's hours and hours and hours and hours of work beforehand. The process
Mm-hmm.
that you have to really fall in love with being great. So with what I do with people is, it all starts out with doing the inner work and figuring out your authentic, vulnerable, most naked self. And
Mm-hmm.
who is that? Without any of that heavy armor on you that people, they lug around this armor, this invisible armor with them all the time. Everybody does. I've done it, and I still have some of that armor. But it starts out the inner work, and then it gets into the preparation phase. So you have to figure out what is your mission? What's the end game? What are the obstacles in the way? What are your contingency plans? Put it under live fire. Trial it. Then you get into that moment and you got to execute. And then within that moment, you're trying to keep score. You're trying to figure out what the scoreboard is. Your response management is so huge. If things come off the rails, you got to go back to the contingency plans that you trained on
Mm-hmm.
and really try to develop. And then once you're immediately done with that moment, you go into debrief mode and you express gratitude. And because we all know the opposite of depression is gratitude,
Gratitude,
right?
yeah.
So we express gratitude.
Truly feeling it and being in the moment with it. That's another thing
Yeah,
too. Own the
exactly.
moment and be in the moment.
Correct. And you go through that debrief right away
Yeah.
with lessons learned. And a lot of people don't do this. And it takes 5-10 minutes. That's it, to do that quick debrief. And how I got that lesson was from a mentor of mine in the Navy SEALs. He's in the SEAL teams for 16 years. One of the things that they do after every single live op or training op is they do an immediate debrief, and they get really authentic with each other about what they did well, what they didn't do well, who can improve on what, and how it's going to be better the next time. Even if it was an incredible training op or a mission, they're constantly turning
Yeah.
turning the nozzle to get to that right pressure point. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when you
You
talk
want
about
everything at
process.
100 to 100. So you might have like,
Yeah.
50 different attributes you're looking for. And, guys that are listening to this or girls that are listening to this that have played Madden know this thing where like every player starts out and it's like a 72 or whatever, right? But they have like 50 different things that are like speed, accuracy, jump, vertical, all kinds of stuff. And like, some of them are in the 50s, some of them are in the 70s, some of them might be up in the 90s. And to get a player up towards that 99 level, which is the perfect score, I think, in Madden, I don't know, has 100 ever come out to your knowledge?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think
No.
so. 99 is basically what you're looking for. And
Mahomes is 99.
yeah, and you have to get to that level, right? But the analogy I'm using here is the fact of all these different levels we have in life. right? The way we articulate, the way we show up in the world, the way our networking skills, our communication skills, our work ethic, our discipline. We have all these things. And how do we get closer? Am I reading you right on that?
You're 100. You're 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's so important for people to, if they're not evaluating it, how do you, like, without checks and balances, how do you know where you're at? So, like you said, I just wrote it
You
down,
know,
a 5 to 10 minute debrief. That's all it takes. We're not talking about, 3 hour meeting you got to go into. But I remember the same thing every time when I was a leader back in corporate America, which is where I came from, and I know you did too. Like, you got 10 years. So I was about the same time. When I was leading a sales team, we used to do meetings, and we used to like often whenever there's downtime, and it would be we'd watch someone do the sales presentation, and we would take notes. Sometimes it was like with a client, and they didn't even know, like, we were trying to be hidden and pretend we were busy, but we were taking notes of like what we heard. And we
sure.
do two things: I like and I wish. Like, what could we have done better, and what was something that, man, keep doing that. Replicate success, duplicate it, and some of the stuff you need to clean up, you sometimes don't even know. I'll just share something really quick, and we'll continue to roll because I know we only have like 15 minutes left. Yesterday, I was doing an interview just like this one, recorded it, and I recorded in two different places just to make sure that the file is safe and we're good to go. And I forgot to stop it. I forgot to stop the recording in one spot. And after my interview was done, I went on to another phone call, and the recording went on, right? It kept going. So later in the day, I was like, wow, I have this like 3 hour audio file. What the hell happened? It was only
I've done
supposed to be
that
like,
before.
it was supposed to be 45 minutes long. Why is it 3 hours? I'm like, oh my God, I never stopped it. So I went back and just skimmed through it. And it was me talking to a client. It was me talking to a prospect. And I was like, it was game tape for me to hear my confidence. And there were times I was like, why do I not sound confident in that? Oh, because that's something I recently learned. And then when I was really hitting home, like, shooting the threes and just sinking
Yeah.
them, it was stuff I knew inside and out. So I actually evaluated, hey, this is an area that I can tell in my voice. I don't realize it when I was saying it yesterday, but then let's watch back or listen back to the game tape. I noticed that that's an area of weakness just because I wasn't talking about it as confidently. And I know people pick up on body language and voice
Sure.
inflection and all that stuff. So I'm sure that could have been an area where they're like, I don't know what this dude right now, he's saying this, but so it just reminded me, like, okay, if that's an area, let's do it. But without the game tape. So the 5-10 minute debrief is the game tape, is looking back at it. Like, why do sports and athletes and coaches make their guys watch game tape over and over and over? Well, how are they gonna know what they're doing right
Correct.
or wrong? Right?
Correct. And the thing that you have to approach that with a level of gratitude. So
Yeah.
you had that recording of those couple conversations. You have to
Yeah.
be so grateful for that, because you're like, whereas a lot of people, I think, would go and look and listen to that and look for the negatives, because here's the deal. I mean, there's really 8 core feelings.
Mm-hmm.
5 of those 8 core feelings are negative, and through evolutionary biology, we overlearn negative as opposed to positives. So
Yeah.
most people are going to look at that, and they're going to read that, and they're going to go through and say, oh man, this was bad, this was bad, this was bad, instead of just hitting the timeout and saying, you know what, I'm so grateful for this because now I have a chance to improve. I have a chance to get better. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just that little rewiring of thought is helps immensely.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we talked a little bit about in this conversation so far, it comes up quite a bit on the show. My mission, again, is to inspire our audience to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. When I met you, and I believe I was introduced through Robert Grant, is that accurate? I
Yes.
want, I want
Yeah,
to give a
Rob.
shout out to my man, RG. And when I was doing my
Big
homework,
Rob.
Big Rob, when I was doing my homework on you, Eric, I was like, man, this guy, like, you live and breathe exactly that, being brave and bold in pursuit of your dreams. But that doesn't come without consistent failure, And we talked about MJ, Michael Jordan. One of the things he says is the reason that he was successful is because he took 9,000 shots and missed, but he
Sure.
was not, he was going to take 9,001. You know what I mean? So he wasn't afraid to continue to do that. People that are where we're aspiring to go have tried and failed more times than we have. You and I have tried and failed more times than the person who just keeps reading a book and not starting something, right?
Sure.
And failure's okay. It happens. It happens more times to the people who never give up than it does to the one or two time try and then failure and then give up. So it's going to happen. It happens to everybody. So we may as well learn from it. Now we don't want to intentionally fail. We don't want to be okay with it. My point is that we need to learn from it and move on, and then do the debriefs with ourselves and with our team, so we can limit the failure and start to get more into our wins, right? But you need to play the game enough to, and I know we're like total sports analogy guys, but you literally need to play the game, get in the game to have your moment. You're not going to have a moment if you're on the sidelines. So,
Correct.
but adversity is something that comes up quite a bit. That's what I wanted to get to. So I know you've dealt with a fair share of adversity as well in business and as an entrepreneur, as a coach. Can you share some of your greatest tests in life and how you managed to bounce back?
You know, it's a great question. I fail all the time, and I fail. The thing is, if you're going to fail, you might as well fail spectacularly. And there's so many things that I look back on, and I look at there's one recent failure that I had. I got a meeting with a really huge um, hockey player rep agency. They're based out of Montreal. They rep some of the biggest names in hockey. And I was like completely stunned that they even would want to even take a meeting with me. So I approached them about helping their players in career transition. And for every one of the big stars that they have, like, they rep Patrice Bergeron and Chris Letang and a few other people that are massive stars. And for every one of those guys, there's like 5 guys that are playing in the AHL, not making anywhere near the money that those guys are making. So anyways, I'm bold. So I take chances and I reach out to people that, I think most people would be like, I don't know if I should do that or not. I just do it. Right. And sometimes I get myself in situations where I feel like the moment is a little bit too big for me. And going back a couple of months when I had this meeting, so I met with, the people that own this agency are billionaires. Like they have a large food conglomerate up in Canada. They're like the 20th richest family in Canada, basically. And I'm talking to the guy's son that basically runs the agency. And the whole time I over prepped for the meeting. I was like, I'm just gonna prep everything, make sure that there's any question I have is any question I have, I'm gonna answer it, and I got so oversight and overjacked for that meeting that I got into my own head. And while on that meeting, things went sideways like 15 minutes into the meeting. Massive deal. And I couldn't get around the fact that I'm like, why is a billionaire why are they talking to Eric Bond from Buffalo, New York about athletes and helping them in the transition of life after sports? And the mistake that I made is I put them on a pedestal like they were better than me. And they're not. They're really nobody when you really think about it. But the thing that I dealt with in that particular moment is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is a super real thing. And here's the deal. It lives in the majority of high achievers. Like an incredibly high amount of high achieving people have imposter syndrome in comparison to people that aren't really high achieving or just kind of go along with the status quo. And nothing against people that are like, slinging trash or whatever. Like, I have the utmost respect for anybody in any job. I don't care what your job, what your profession is. I respect everybody if you're a good person. But somebody that's going up and down the street picking up trash on garbage day, they don't really deal with imposter syndrome unless there's something else going on that I don't know about. People that are trying to play big deal with it all the time. And the deal with imposter syndrome is you cannot look at it, and this is a lesson that I learned, you cannot look at it as a bug, like a bug in the operating system. You have to look at it as a feature of who you are, because the second that you don't have it, you are not playing high enough. You are not reaching for higher levels to get comfortable in. And that was a huge, huge lesson for me when I was on that call. And like I said, I mean, I failed like I don't even know. I mean, I remember my parents were here watching my son. And so I was in my office where I'm recording this from, having this call on Zoom, just like this. My parents were downstairs. They come over every Wednesday. They stay here instead of having me drive my son to their house. And I came downstairs, and my dad's like, he knew I was a meeting. He's like, "How's the meeting?" And I'm like, "I can't even talk about it. I live right by the Niagara Gorge, so I literally walked right out my front door, went for a walk for like 45 minutes along the gorge, was so mad at myself in that moment because I knew better. But after that 45-minute walk, I came back, I went right into my debrief, and I wrote down all the notes about it and everything that I learned. And I was grateful for the opportunity that they took to even have a conversation with me. And I just moved past it, and it was done and over with.
Yeah.
And I look
You
back
learned a
now and I'm
lot.
like,
Yeah, the
awesome.
things you learned from it, Eric, are going to be monumental in so many other wins. Kind
Sure.
of like Josh Allen sitting on the sideline in Houston, when that game came unraveled. They were up 16-0, ended up losing it. Forget the final
Sure.
score, but he was just like staring off into the who knows what he was seeing in his head, right? You could tell he was
Yeah.
just thinking of every play, most likely that he didn't do, opposed to the fact that he did make many plays in the game to even keep them in it or to get them ahead, including catching a freaking touchdown pass where he's like diving into the end zone, getting his knees taken out from underneath him. And he's still
Sure.
thinking, like, I didn't do enough, right? So you're
Yeah.
thinking, because you know your potential. That's the thing. I think that's the reason that people that are just kind of scooting through life opposed to reaching really big, the imposter syndrome thing, I think, happens because we know where we want to go. And sometimes when we start to get it, we're like, ooh, do I really belong hanging with the group of people that are getting these things? Or maybe it's your first time you buy the nice car that you've really been, that's maybe
Yeah.
on your vision board, and then you get it and you're driving it and you're like, feels a little funny because I grew up just kind of like being happy that we had four wheels on our car, whatever. And you have like this
Sure.
imposter syndrome. And I get it sometimes too, um, because, the people I'm hanging with or aspiring to be have been in business for decades, and I'm
Sure.
4 years in, and there's things I feel that they can learn from me, and I can learn from them. And the best people I like to surround myself with are highly successful, but don't have this like complex of, oh, I can't hang out with Eric. Eric's only been doing it
Amen.
a few years. I'm not going to talk to that dude, because they know they were that dude. Do you know who Tim Grover is? I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I was just listening to him last night, cutting the grass, listening to a podcast. It was him and Ed Milet talking about winning. And there was a second interview I heard him do with Ed. And the first one he talks about, and it made me really think of you, just telling the story, that he literally, I don't know the full story. I didn't memorize it from the first conversation because I listened to it like 2 years ago. But he went to Chicago or wherever the Bulls were practicing, and he just literally walked in as a nobody and said he wanted to start coaching Michael Jordan. Like, that's laughable, right? You and I laugh. Everybody laughs. He didn't have this huge track record of big athletes and celebrities. But I forget what he did, but he did like you did. You went into that meeting, he was prepared and he believed in himself. But I think, and you learn from your situation, but in his situation, however he handled it, he ended up working with Michael Jordan and having that opportunity, and then he couldn't mess it up. And he worked with him throughout basically his whole career, was a big part of that reason for all the rings. Um, Michael Jordan later said he said, yeah, I'm just going to use a little language, but he said, working with Tim Grover, how would you define working with him? And Michael's response was, he's an asshole, biggest asshole I ever known. But that's what got the best out of him, because who wants a coach that's just going to be like, oh, you're great, and if you miss a few shots, like, no. Tim Grover was a trainer that needed to get him in the best shape of his life, and he knew how each of the characters that he coached had different personalities, and he'd work with them to get the best out of them. And that's why
Right.
they worked with him. So the interesting thing is he really didn't have this elaborate record and still went in there and somehow managed to get the gig, which I think is a reminder that we all put our pants on the same, and whether someone's a millionaire today, let's not compare our day 50 to someone's day 2,552, right?
Yes.
Like,
Amen.
everyone is in business, and some people are 30,000 days into their business. Like, let's be real about it. and acknowledge the fact that at some point that person was really in your shoes. And like I said, the greats understand, remember, and reflect on that, and they want to help you out. I know we're like running out of time. I usually talk about gratitude at the end to get some things you're grateful for. You mentioned a few of them already.
Sure.
I have another one that's just about to kick off, but can you kind of wrap us up with this thought, right? So what I want to do is remind everyone that we're all the authors, and you kind of talked about this already. We're the authors and the protagonists in our own life story. Imagine this, Eric. You get to write the ending, God willing, that you live a long, prosperous life, all right? You're looking back and you're reflecting on it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
Oh, man. That's a loaded question, my friend. It's interesting because when people when their day is up, and this is something that I talk about with people in my coaching program, is legacy and impact. If you're at the you're having whatever wake or whatever religious thing that people do, or whatever denomination you are, and they're talking about how much money you accumulated or all the great successes that you had in life, you lived your life around the wrong people. You lived your life around people that didn't see the true beauty of the person that you are. And for me, my legacy is, I want to serve and help people and have them remember me as a person that was there always for them and always push them to be better than what they thought that they could be possible with. And obviously the two biggest things for me is being a husband and a father. That's what I do everything for. And it's obviously, it's cliche to say, but without the support from my wife and my little boy Erickson, our little boy Erickson, and the one that we have coming in 5 weeks, that's what I live life for. And that's why I take the risks that I take, because my legacy to them is everything to me. And I want them to know that I did things to the best of my ability, and I did things right and honest and on the up and up, and was always there for people when they needed me the most.
Wow. I love that, brother. I'd love to have another half hour with you easily. Here's the deal, man. You are doing it. Realize you're building it. You're doing it one person at a time. You connect on a deeper level. I could tell that you really cared about our first conversation. You wrote a nice email back. Like, you got the personality for it. You got the heart for it. You got the ability for it. Remind yourself that. Next time you have imposter syndrome, remind yourself you have the ability to do it. Owning each moment of each day. I love that. And I just want to say, God bless yourself, your family, your beautiful wife and son, and your son on the way. You're someone who, I'm saying on the record, I love to stay in close contact with you. We're both Buffalo or Western New Yorkers, and let's do this thing together, man. Let's grow our legacies hand in hand and just help each other out. And we know what resonates. So I'll be happy to send people your way for your podcast, and you can do the same here. And I just want to thank you for being on the show with our audience right here. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Eric Bond. Check him out on social. It's all clickable in the show notes. Thank you for being here today.
Mike, thank you so much. I am incredibly grateful for your time to have me on here. It means a lot. Anybody that take from one person that has a podcast to another, I know what it's like to put these things together, and I'm so grateful for your time and effort and the commitment that you're making right now to leave your mark and own your moment. So I love it, man, and let's absolutely stay in touch.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, guys, check it out. The Competitor's Mindset. Anywhere podcasts can be found. Talk to you later. Thanks, brother. I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/micedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/micedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.